The phone screen glowed in the darkness of the empty classroom, its harsh light illuminating Nathan Parker's trembling hands. The video playing on the screen made his stomach churn. Sweat dripped down his spine as he watched the deepfake of Ms. Sullivan, their new literature teacher, in a compromising situation that never happened but looked devastatingly real. "This time, they've gone too far," Nathan whispered, his voice cracking. He knew who they were. Everyone at Westfield Academy knew, even if no one dared to say it out loud. Ethan Mitchell and his circle ruled this school with a digital iron fist, destroying anyone who threatened their perfect GPAs or challenged their dominance. Nathan's thumb hovered over the delete button. He could pretend he never saw this, stay invisible like he had for the past year since they'd nearly driven him to... He shook his head, banishing the memory. Ms. Sullivan didn't deserve what was coming. She was different from the other teachers. She actually cared. The cafeteria doors burst open behind him. Nathan spun around, shoving the phone into his pocket, heart hammering. But it was just the janitor, pushing his cart of cleaning supplies. The old man nodded silently and moved on, used to finding students in strange places at Westfield Academy. Nathan knew he had minutes to decide. The video was scheduled to go viral at midnight, in less than 2 hours. His hands shook as he pulled out the phone again. This wasn't just about one video. If Ethan was this bold, there had to be more planned. 2 months earlier, Rebecca Sullivan had walked into advanced literature for the first time, carrying nothing but a worn leather satchel and radiating quiet confidence. At 28, she was younger than most teachers at Westfield, with auburn hair pulled back in a simple ponytail and eyes that seemed to see through the careful masks every student wore. "Good morning," she'd said, her voice carrying a subtle Boston accent. "I'm Ms. Sullivan, and before we dive into Fitzgerald and Hemingway, I want you to know something. This classroom is a safe space. Your thoughts, your real thoughts, matter here." In the front row, Ethan Mitchell had leaned back in his chair, that perfect smile spreading across his face, the one that made teachers trust him and students fear him. Tall, athletic, with carefully styled dark hair and designer clothes that whispered money. Ethan looked like he'd stepped out of a college brochure. His ice-blue eyes had assessed Ms. Sullivan like she was a puzzle to solve. Beside him, Madison Bennett had shifted uncomfortably, where Ethan projected confidence. Madison radiated nervous energy. Her blonde hair fell in waves past her shoulders, and she twisted her rose gold bracelet, a nervous habit she'd developed junior year. She'd glanced at Ethan, then at Ms. Sullivan, worry flickering across her features. That first class had seemed so normal. Ethan had raised his hand frequently, offering insights about symbolism in The Great Gatsby that impressed even Ms. Sullivan. His answers were polished, rehearsed, perfect, just like everything else about him. But Nathan had noticed something the others missed. The way Ethan's jaw tightened when Ms. Sullivan gently corrected one of his interpretations. The way his fingers drummed against his desk when she praised another student's unique perspective. The way he'd whispered something to Madison that made her face pale. Now, standing in the empty cafeteria with that horrible video on his phone, Nathan understood. Ethan couldn't tolerate anyone who didn't play by his rules. And Ms. Sullivan had committed the ultimate sin. She'd treated him like just another student. Nathan's decision crystallized. He couldn't let them destroy another person. Not again. His sneakers squeaked against the polished floor as he ran toward the faculty wing, the phone burning in his pocket, like evidence of a crime he didn't commit, but couldn't ignore. The hallway stretched endlessly before him, lined with trophy cases showcasing Westfield Academy's achievements, debate championships, science fair victories, perfect SAT scores, all the glittering proof of excellence that came at such a terrible cost. Nathan's own name was in one of those cases from before everything went wrong. He knocked on Ms. Sullivan's office door, his knuckles rapping against the wood in an unsteady rhythm. "Ms. Sullivan, it's Nathan Parker. There's something urgent." The door opened, and Ms. Sullivan stood there in her comfortable cardigan and reading glasses, grading papers scattered on the desk behind her. Her expression shifted from mild surprise to concern as she took in Nathan's pale face and shaking hands. "Nathan? What's wrong? Come in, sit down." He stumbled into the office, collapsing into the chair across from her desk. The words stuck in his throat. How did you tell someone that their life was about to be destroyed? That teenagers with too much technology and too little empathy had turned her into their latest target. "Ms. Sullivan, Nathan pulled out his phone, then hesitated. "There's something you need to see, but I need you to know it's not real. It's fake. They made it to hurt you." Her brow furrowed, but she remained calm. That unshakable composure that had probably marked her as a threat to Ethan from day one. "Show me, Nathan." With trembling fingers, he pulled up the video and turned the screen toward her. He couldn't watch her face as she viewed it, instead staring at his own shoes, counting the scuff marks on the leather. "I see," Ms. Sullivan said after a long moment. Her voice was steady, controlled, but Nathan caught the slight tremor underneath. "Do you know who created this?" Nathan nodded miserably. "It's going to be sent to everyone at midnight. The whole school. Parents, maybe even the school board. I found it because I know how they work. They did something similar to me last year." Ms. Sullivan leaned forward, her eyes filled with something Nathan couldn't quite identify. Not pity. He'd seen enough of that to recognize it. This was different. Understanding. Maybe. Or rage, carefully controlled. "Nathan, I need you to tell me everything. But first, I want you to know how brave you are for coming to me. This couldn't have been easy." The word brave broke something inside him. Tears threatened to spill as memories of last year flooded back. The edited photos, the fake screenshots of messages he'd never sent, the systematic destruction of his reputation until he'd stood on the bridge over the Charles River at 2 a.m, wondering if anyone would even notice if he jumped. "It's not just one video," Nathan managed. "When Ethan targets someone, he creates a whole series, each one worse than the last, released strategically to cause maximum damage. He calls it the treatment." Ms. Sullivan's hands folded calmly on the desk, but Nathan noticed her knuckles were white. "How many teachers has he done this to?" "You're the fourth. Mr. Chen left mid-semester last year. Ms. Rodriguez had a family emergency and never came back. Dr. Williams retired early." Nathan's voice dropped to a whisper. "But they've done it to dozens of students. I was one of them." The office fell silent except for the ticking of the antique clock on the bookshelf. Ms. Sullivan stood and walked to the window, gazing out at the manicured campus grounds. When she turned back, her face held a determination that made Nathan sit up straighter. "We're going to stop this," she said simply, "not just for me, but for everyone they've hurt. Are you willing to help me?" "Nathan." Meanwhile, 3 floors up in the computer lab. Ethan Mitchell leaned back in his ergonomic chair, admiring his handiwork on the screen. The editing software displayed timeline after timeline of carefully crafted videos, each designed to systematically destroy Rebecca Sullivan's career and reputation. "This one's my masterpiece," he told the small group gathered around him. Chase Williams, his second in command, whistled appreciatively. Two other boys, juniors desperate for Ethan's approval, nodded eagerly. Madison Bennett stood by the door, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. The computer lab's blue-white glow made her look ghostly, highlighting the tension in her jaw. "Ethan, don't you think this is—" "What? Maddie?" Ethan spun his chair to face her, that dangerous smile playing at his lips. "Excessive. She embarrassed me in front of the entire class, said my interpretation of Gatsby's green light was surface level. Meh." And his phone buzzed. A text from his father. Harvard acceptance stats came out, only taking 3.2% this year. No room for anything less than perfection. Ethan's hand tightened around the phone until his knuckles went white. The smile vanished, replaced by something darker. Madison had seen this transformation too many times, the moment Ethan stopped being the golden boy and became something else entirely. "She has to go," Ethan said flatly. "Teachers who don't recognize excellence when they see it don't belong at Westfield. We're doing the school a favor." "She helped me," Madison said quietly, "when I was struggling with my essay about my mom's death. She stayed after school for 2 hours. She didn't have to do that." Ethan stood smoothly, crossing to Madison in 3 quick strides. He towered over her, using every inch of his 6'2" frame. But instead of intimidating, his touch was gentle as he tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "Maddie," his voice turned soft, persuasive. "Remember freshman year, when those girls were spreading rumors about you? Who stopped them? Who made sure you weren't eating lunch alone in the bathroom anymore?" Madison's resolve wavered. She did remember. Ethan had saved her from social suicide, had brought her into his inner circle when no one else would talk to her. But the price of his protection grew steeper every year. "This is different," she insisted. "This is illegal. Creating deep fakes. It's justice." Chase interrupted from his computer. "These teachers think they can come in here and disrupt the system. We're all fighting for the same 10 spots at Ivy's. Every B+ they give is a rejection letter." Madison wanted to argue, but the words died in her throat. They'd had this conversation before. In Ethan's world, there were winners and losers, and losing wasn't an option. Not when your father had already donated a building to Harvard. Not when your family's entire legacy depended on maintaining perfection. Back in her office, Ms. Sullivan pulled up her laptop and began typing rapidly. Nathan watched, confused, as she navigated to what looked like a coding interface. "You know about technology?" he asked, surprised. She smiled grimly. "I wasn't always a literature teacher. Nathan had a different life before I decided teenagers deserved better than what the world was giving them. Turns out, my old skills might be useful after all." Her fingers flew across the keyboard, lines of code scrolling past, faster than Nathan could read. First rule of dealing with cyber bullies: document everything. Second rule: understand their methods. Third rule, she paused, looking up at him: turn their weapons against them. Nathan's phone buzzed. A message in the school's anonymous chat app, Midnight Premiere. "Don't miss the show. EM." His stomach turned. They're advertising it. Like it's entertainment. Ms. Sullivan's expression hardened. "How many students are in Ethan's inner circle? Core group? maybe 4 or 5. But he has influence over dozens. People who owe him favors, who are scared of becoming targets, who think staying close keeps them safe. And Madison Bennett? Nathan hesitated. Madison was complicated. Unlike the others who followed Ethan out of fear or ambition, Madison seemed genuinely attached to him. But lately, cracks had been showing. "She's different," Nathan said finally. "I think she has a conscience. It's just buried." Ms. Sullivan nodded thoughtfully. "People aren't born cruel, Nathan. They learn it. And anything learned can be unlearned." She turned her laptop screen toward him. "Look at this." The screen showed metadata from the video file. Hidden in the code were digital fingerprints, IP addresses, timestamps, even the registration information for the software used to create it. "They didn't cover their tracks," Ms. Sullivan observed. "Arrogance makes people sloppy." "You can't report this to the administration," Nathan said quickly. "Ethan's father is on the board. His mother runs the biggest alumni donation fund. They'll bury it." "I'm not planning to go to the administration," Ms. Sullivan said. "At least, not first. Tell me about last year, what they did to you." Nathan's hands clenched in his lap. He'd never told anyone the full story. Even his therapist only knew pieces. But something about Miss Sullivan's steady gaze, the way she'd faced that horrible video without flinching, made him feel like maybe he could trust her. "It started when I beat Ethan in the state science fair," he began. "I didn't mean to. My project on neural networks was just... I'd been working on it for years. I didn't know he'd entered the same category." The memories came flooding back. The congratulations that felt hollow because he could see Ethan's face in the crowd. That perfect smile not reaching his eyes. The way conversation stopped when he walked into rooms, the slow, systematic isolation. First, they hacked my social media, posted things I never said, racist jokes, cruel comments about classmates. By the time I proved it wasn't me, the damage was done. Then came the photos, edited pictures that made it look like I was doing things, sent to my parents, my younger sister's friends. Ms. Sullivan's expression remained neutral, but her hand moved across the desk as if to reach for his, then stopped. Professional boundaries, even in moments like this. "The worst part," Nathan continued, his voice barely audible, "was how everyone just accepted it, like they were relieved to have a reason to destroy me. All those friends I thought I had, they were just waiting for permission to turn." "Except you survived," Ms. Sullivan said softly. "You're here. You're fighting back. That takes incredible strength." Nathan laughed bitterly. "I almost didn't. There's a bridge over the Charles River." "I know the one," Ms. Sullivan interrupted gently. "I've stood on it myself, years ago. Different reasons. Same darkness. But we're both here now, aren't we? And that means something." The shared confession hung between them, creating a bond born of understanding. Nathan felt something shift inside him, a tiny spark of hope that maybe, this time, would be different. Ms. Sullivan straightened, the moment of vulnerability passing. "Here's what we're going to do. First, we need to prevent that midnight release. Second, we need to expose the full scope of what's been happening. And third," she smiled, and it was sharp enough to cut, "we're going to teach Ethan Mitchell that actions have consequences." In the cafeteria, dinner service was winding down. Ethan held court at his usual table, surrounded by admirers and sycophants. He picked at his gourmet meal. Westfield Academy didn't do standard cafeteria food, while regaling his audience with a story about destroying someone in debate class. Madison sat beside him, pushing food around her plate. She couldn't stop thinking about Ms. Sullivan's kindness. The way she'd held Madison while she sobbed about her mother, not offering empty platitudes, but just being present. And now Ethan was going to destroy her for the crime of doing her job. "Earth to Maddie," Ethan said, snapping his fingers in front of her face. "You're being weird." "I'm fine," she lied. "Just thinking about the calc test tomorrow." Ethan's eyes narrowed slightly. He knew her tells, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear when lying, how her voice went up half an octave, but he let it slide. Turning back to his audience, "Anyway, Campbell thinks he's getting valedictorian, but wait until he sees his peer review scores. Amazing how many people think he's difficult to work with and arrogant." Ethan's smile was pure predator. "Guess that's what happens when you correct the teacher one too many times." The group laughed obediently, but Madison caught a few uncomfortable glances. Everyone at the table knew they could be next. Ethan's protection was conditional, revocable at any moment. They were all just dancing on ice, hoping it wouldn't crack beneath them. Her phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. "Your friend is about to hurt someone who helped you. Are you going to let him?" Madison's blood ran cold. She glanced around, but everyone was focused on Ethan. Who had sent this? Who else knew about the video? Another buzz. "Check your email. See what he's really planning. Then decide who you want to be." With shaking hands, Madison opened her email under the table. An anonymous message with attachments. She clicked the first one and nearly gasped. It wasn't just one video of Ms. Sullivan. It was an entire folder labeled RS Destruction Protocol with dozens of files. Videos, edited photos, fake social media profiles, even a forged police report. This went beyond a prank or even typical bullying. This was a coordinated campaign designed to not just end Ms. Sullivan's career, but destroy her entire life. And at the bottom of the folder structure, Madison found something that made her stomach heave. A subfolder labeled Insurance, containing similar materials for other targets, including one folder with her own name. Ethan had been collecting material on everyone, even his closest allies, ready to destroy anyone who stepped out of line. She'd thought she was his friend, maybe something more, but she was just another potential victim, kept close and compliant by the threat of annihilation. "I need to use the bathroom," Madison said abruptly, standing so fast her chair scraped against the floor. Ethan grabbed her wrist, his grip just tight enough to hurt. "You okay, babe? You look pale." The endearment was new, possessive. Madison forced a smile. "Just girl stuff. Be right back." He released her, but his eyes followed her all the way to the door. Madison could feel the weight of his stare, the calculation behind it. He was already suspicious. She had maybe minutes before he checked what she'd been looking at on her phone. Instead of heading to the bathroom, Madison ducked into an empty classroom and pulled out her phone with trembling fingers. She didn't know who had sent the warning, but she knew what she had to do. She forwarded the entire folder to her personal email, then screenshot the most damaging evidence. Her finger hovered over Ms. Sullivan's contact information. They all had their teachers' emails for assignment submissions, but before she could hit send, the classroom door opened. Madison's heart stopped. Nathan Parker stood in the doorway, looking as surprised as she felt. They stared at each other for a long moment. Two people on opposite sides of Ethan's war, suddenly finding themselves in the same foxhole. "You know," Nathan said. It wasn't a question. Madison nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I can't let him do this. Not again, not to her." "Then help us stop him," Nathan said simply. And in that moment, Madison Bennett made a choice that would change everything. She thought of her mother, who'd died fighting cancer with grace and dignity. What would she think of her daughter now? Standing by while good people were destroyed. "Tell me what you need," Madison said, wiping her tears with determination. Nathan smiled for the first time in months. "Follow me. Ms. Sullivan has a plan." As they hurried through the empty hallways, neither noticed the figure watching from the shadows. Chase Williams pulled out his phone and typed a quick message to Ethan. "We have a problem. The mouse and your girl are together, heading to Sullivan's office." In the cafeteria, Ethan read the message and felt something cold settle in his chest. Betrayal was the one sin he couldn't forgive. Madison had chosen her side, and now she'd learn what happened to people who crossed Ethan Mitchell. He stood smoothly, his entire demeanor shifting. The charming golden boy vanished, replaced by something far more dangerous. "Change of plans," he announced to his remaining followers. "We're moving up the timeline. Release everything. Now." Release everything now. The words echoed through the cafeteria as Ethan's followers scrambled for their phones. Within seconds, the first notifications began pinging across the student body. The carefully crafted deepfake of Ms. Sullivan spread like digital wildfire. But something was wrong. The video that appeared on everyone's screens wasn't what Ethan had created. Instead of the humiliating deepfake, students found themselves watching footage from the computer lab's security camera. There was Ethan, clear as day, manipulating the software. His voice captured perfectly. "Teachers who don't recognize excellence when they see it don't belong at Westfield." Madison and Nathan burst into Ms. Sullivan's office just as her laptop screen lit up with notifications. The teacher's calm expression didn't waver as she watched the chaos unfold on her monitoring system. "You switched the files," Madison breathed, understanding dawning. "How did you?" "Like I told Nathan, I wasn't always a literature teacher," Ms. Sullivan said. 5 years in cybersecurity before I decided to follow my passion. Turns out, teenage hackers aren't as sophisticated as they think they are." Nathan stared at the screen showing the school's social media feeds, exploding with reactions. But Ethan will just deny it. He always finds a way to spin things. "Not this time," Madison said, pulling out her phone. "I have everything, the whole folder, including his insurance files on other students. Years of blackmail material." Ms. Sullivan studied Madison carefully. "You understand what you're risking by coming forward. Ethan won't forgive this." "I know." Madison's voice trembled but held firm. "But I can't forgive myself if I don't. My mom used to say, integrity is what you do when no one's watching. Well, everyone's watching now." The office door slammed open. Ethan stood there. His perfect composure finally cracked. His eyes were wild. His carefully styled hair disheveled from running. Behind him, Chase Williams and 2 other boys formed an intimidating wall. "You!" Ethan pointed at Madison, his voice shaking with rage. "You betrayed me, after everything I've done for you. You mean, after everything you've held over me?" Madison shot back, finding courage she didn't know she had. "I'm done being your puppet. Ethan." Ethan turned his fury on Ms. Sullivan. "You think you've won? My father owns this school. One phone call and you're finished. You'll never teach again." Ms. Sullivan stood slowly, and despite being several inches shorter than Ethan, her presence filled the room. "Your father's influence ends where federal cybercrime laws begin, creating and distributing deepfake pornography of a teacher. That's not a suspension. Ethan, that's prison time." The color drained from Ethan's face, for the first time in his life. His father's money and power couldn't shield him from consequences. "You're bluffing," Chase said, but uncertainty colored his voice. "She wouldn't actually press charges." "Try me," Ms. Sullivan said simply. "I've spent 2 months documenting every incident, every threat, every piece of harassment, not just against me, but against dozens of students. Nathan, would you like to share what Ethan's campaign did to you?" Nathan stepped forward, his voice stronger than it had been in years. "You nearly killed me, Ethan. I stood on that bridge ready to jump because you decided I didn't deserve to exist. All because I had the audacity to be better than you at something. You embarrassed me," Ethan snapped, but the justification sounded hollow even to his own ears. "So you tried to destroy my life." Nathan's voice rose. "You sent edited photos to my 12-year-old sister's Instagram. 12 years old. Ethan. She still has nightmares." The room fell silent. Even Chase and the other boys shifted uncomfortably. There were lines even they hadn't known Ethan had crossed. Madison's phone rang. She glanced at the screen and paled. "It's Principal Coleman. He wants all of us in his office. Now." The walk to the principal's office felt like a funeral march. Students lined the hallways, everyone staring at their phones, whispers following their progress. Ethan walked with his head high, but Madison could see the micro-expressions he usually controlled so well, the twitch in his jaw, the white knuckles, the slight tremor in his hands. Principal Coleman's office was crowded. Along with the principal sat 3 members of the school board, the head of IT, and a woman in a severe suit who introduced herself as the school's legal counsel. But the person who made Ethan stop dead in his tracks was his father. Harrison Mitchell stood by the window, his face a mask of cold fury. Beside him, Ethan's mother sat perfectly still, her designer suit impeccable, her expression unreadable. "Sit," Principal Coleman commanded, and they all found seats. "Ms. Sullivan, perhaps you could explain how the school's entire social media system was compromised tonight." "I didn't compromise anything," Ms. Sullivan said calmly. "I simply ensured that when Ethan released his planned attack, the truth went out instead. Every piece of evidence has been preserved with full chain of custody for law enforcement." "This is entrapment," Mr. Mitchell snapped. "My son is being framed by a vindictive teacher who couldn't handle criticism." "Your son?" Miss Sullivan said, her voice steel wrapped in silk, "has been running a digital terrorism ring from inside this school for 3 years. Would you like to see the evidence, or would you prefer to wait for the FBI's Cybercrime Division to show it to you?" "FBI." Mrs. Mitchell spoke for the first time, her voice barely above a whisper. "Ethan, what have you done?" "I protected our family's reputation," Ethan shot back. "I did what you taught me. Win at any cost. Never accept second place. Destroy the competition. Ring any bells. Dad," Mr. Mitchell's face flushed. "I never told you to. You never told me anything except that I wasn't good enough." Ethan exploded, jumping to his feet. "Harvard this, legacy that. Do you know what my GPA is? 4.6. Do you know the last time you said you were proud of me? Neither do I." The room went silent. Madison watched Ethan shatter in real time, years of pressure finally breaking through his perfect facade. "Every day," Ethan continued, tears streaming down his face, "every single day I wake up terrified that I'll disappoint you, that I'll be the Mitchell who breaks the chain. You compare me to Brandon constantly. Perfect Brandon with his Harvard MBA and his senator wife. But did you know Brandon calls me crying because he's so miserable he can't get out of bed some mornings? Mrs. Mitchell gasped. Ethan. I'm not a machine, Ethan screamed. I'm 17 years old and I've never been allowed to be anything less than perfect. So yeah, I hurt people. I destroyed anyone who threatened the image because, if I didn't, you'd stop loving me. Except you never loved me anyway. You loved the idea of me. He collapsed back into his chair, sobbing. The sound was raw, primal, years of suppressed emotion pouring out. Madison, despite everything, felt her heart break for him. The monster was just a scared child after all. Ms. Sullivan was the first to speak. Principal Coleman, I'd like to propose something. Criminal charges won't solve the underlying problem here. They'll just perpetuate the cycle of destruction. What if, instead, we tried something different? What are you suggesting? The legal counsel asked warily. Restorative justice, Ms. Sullivan said. Ethan faces his victims, makes real amends, gets the help he clearly needs. The other students involved get counseling and education about digital citizenship. We turn this into a learning opportunity, not just punishment. After what he did to you, Nathan asked, incredulous. Ms. Sullivan smiled sadly. Hurt people hurt people, Nathan. But healed people can heal people. Ethan isn't evil. He's a product of a system that values achievement over empathy, success over mental health. Destroying him won't fix that system. Principal Coleman looked uncertain. The board would need to approve this, and the other victims would need to agree. I'll participate, Nathan said quietly. Everyone turned to stare at him. Not for Ethan, for me. I need to face him, to let go of this anger before it turns me into him. Madison nodded. Me too, and I'll testify about everything I know. All of it. The legal counsel whispered urgently with Principal Coleman. The board members huddled together. Mr. Mitchell stood frozen, staring at his broken son like he was seeing him for the first time. Finally, it was Mrs. Mitchell who moved. She crossed to Ethan and, for the first time anyone could remember, pulled him into her arms. I'm sorry, she whispered. We failed you. We turned you into our anxiety, our ambition. That ends now. Principal Coleman cleared his throat. Ms. Sullivan, if you're willing to forego criminal charges, we can implement your restorative justice program. But Ethan will need to undergo psychological evaluation, mandatory therapy, and complete community service. Any violation, any hint of returning to old patterns, and charges will be filed immediately. Agreed, Ms. Sullivan said. There's more, Madison said, pulling out her phone. The insurance files. Ethan has blackmail material on at least 30 students. They all need to know. To be protected. One by one, they went through the files. Each revelation was another nail in the coffin of Ethan's empire. Students he'd been controlling for years would finally be free. The scope of the digital prison he'd created was staggering. Chase Williams and the other boys tried to slip out during the chaos, but security was already waiting. They would face their own consequences, though lesser ones as followers rather than ringleaders. As the meeting finally concluded near midnight, Ethan approached Ms. Sullivan. His face was ravaged by tears, his perfect image completely shattered. Why? He asked. Why show mercy? I tried to destroy you. Because, Ms. Sullivan said gently, someone showed me mercy once when I was lost in my own darkness. Sometimes the bravest thing isn't fighting back. It's choosing to break the cycle. 3 months later, the auditorium was packed for the school's first digital citizenship symposium. Parents, students, and teachers filled every seat. Local news crews set up cameras to cover what had become a model program for schools nationwide. Nathan Parker stood at the podium, his voice clear and confident. 9 months ago, I wanted to die because of cyberbullying. Today, I stand here as proof that things can change. That we can change. He spoke eloquently about his experience, about the dark places harassment had taken him, and about the long road to healing. In the audience, his younger sister beamed with pride. She now led weekly workshops on digital ethics and bystander intervention. Her presentation showed statistics on cyberbullying, but more importantly, it showed the human cost, the faces and stories behind the numbers. In the back row, almost hidden in shadow, Ethan Mitchell sat quietly. He was different now, the arrogance replaced by something quieter, more genuine. Twice a week, he met with a therapist. 3 times a week, he tutored struggling students for free, including Nathan, who was catching up on the months he'd missed while dealing with trauma. His parents sat beside him. Mr. Mitchell had taken a leave from his firm to attend family therapy. Mrs. Mitchell had started a foundation addressing academic pressure and teen mental health. They were all learning, slowly, to be a family instead of an achievement machine. Ms. Sullivan took the stage last. She spoke about forgiveness, about justice that heals rather than destroys, about the courage it takes to change. Every person in this room has the power to create culture, she said, not through force or fear, but through daily choices to treat each other with dignity. She caught Ethan's eye and nodded slightly. Next week, he would give his first public presentation about his journey from bully to advocate. It would be the hardest thing he'd ever done, harder than any test or competition. But it was part of his healing, part of making amends that went beyond words. As the symposium ended, people lingered, talking in small groups. Parents approached their children with new understanding. Students who had been victims found each other, creating support networks. Teachers discussed implementing similar programs. Nathan found himself standing next to Ethan by the water fountain. For a moment, neither spoke. "I'm sorry," Ethan said finally. "Not just sorry like words, but sorry like I feel it in my bones every day. What I did to you was unforgivable." Nathan was quiet for a long moment. "Maybe," he said finally. "But that's not for you to decide. Forgiveness is my choice, my timeline. What matters is that you're trying to be better." "I am," Ethan said. "Every day. It's the hardest thing I've ever done. Being genuine. Being vulnerable. My therapist says I built armor so thick I forgot there was a person inside." "The armor was killing you," Nathan observed, "just like your attacks were killing me. We were both dying, just in different ways." They stood in comfortable silence, 2 former enemies finding a strange peace. Healing wasn't instant. Trust would take time. But in that moment, they were just 2 teenagers learning to be human. Madison joined them, followed by Ms. Sullivan. The 4 of them stood together, victim, perpetrators, and catalyst, looking out at the transformed school community. "You know what's funny?" Madison said. "Ethan spent so much energy trying to get into Harvard, but what we're building here, this might actually matter more than any Ivy League degree." Ms. Sullivan smiled. "The most important education isn't about where you go, it's about who you become. And all of you are becoming people who will change the world, one act of courage at a time." As families began leaving the auditorium, Principal Coleman made one final announcement. I want to thank everyone for attending tonight, and I especially want to announce that Ms. Sullivan has agreed to become our Dean of Student Wellness, a new position created to ensure that what happened here becomes a transformation, not just a moment. The applause was thunderous, but in the back row, 4 people sat quietly, each carrying scars from a war that should never have been fought, but grateful for the peace they'd found on the other side. Outside, the sun was setting over Westfield Academy. In the computer lab, where so much damage had been planned, new posters lined the walls. Digital citizenship starts here. Your words have power. Use it wisely. Kindness is the ultimate strength. Change hadn't come easily. There were still bad days, moments when old patterns tried to reassert themselves, but the culture had shifted. Fear no longer ruled the hallways. Students looked out for each other. Teachers paid attention to the signs they'd previously ignored. The lights dimmed in Westfield Academy as another day ended. But in the darkness, something new was growing. Not fear or intimidation, but hope. Real, hard-won hope that comes from facing the worst in ourselves and choosing to be better. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. There would be setbacks, moments of doubt, times when the old ways seemed easier. But tonight, in this moment, a community had chosen healing over harm, and that made all the difference.